At 11 a.m. on the 11th day of November in 1918, the guns on the Western Front fell silent and the hostilities of World War I ceased. The anniversary of this day holds a special significance and has become universally associated with the remembrance of those Australians who died in the First World War, as well as remembering all Australians who have died and suffered in subsequent wars and armed conflicts. Due to COVID guidelines, the Rotary Club of Noble Park Dingley is not able to hold a Remembrance Day service on Thursday the 11th of November. However, if you would like to place a tribute on the Anzac Memorial in Marcus Road, please do so at any time during that week. In lieu of a Remembrance Day service, we have prepared a short presentation about the significance of this day. The 11th of November is known as Remembrance Day, a day when we take a minute's silence at 11 a.m. to reflect and remember the men and women who have fought in the service of our nation. In 1914, we were a country of less than 5 million people. Yet 324,000 of our young men and women served in distant places in the Middle East, at Gallipoli on the Turkish peninsula, and in France and Belgium, known as the Western Front. These were ordinary young people, like you and me, from cities and small country towns across Australia. They were the farmers, the stockmen, the factory workers, the bank clerks, the engineers, the doctors, the lawyers. They were the backbone of our developing country, and for 4 long years they fought, nursed, cooked, dug tunnels and trenches, drove ambulances, and did whatever else was necessary in the service of king and country. They were eyewitnesses to a war that was bogged down in trenches and mud, whilst the landscape around them was blasted into a featureless wasteland. They were not professional soldiers as we imagine soldiers today, but volunteers with very limited training. These young men served in major battles on land, at sea, and in the air. They were known as the Anzacs, the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, and in proportion to forces fielded, Australia's casualty rate was almost 65%, the highest in the British Empire. One of the reasons for this was that our brave Australians were exposed to the front line in massive numbers. During the course of the war, almost 62,000 Australians died after sustaining injuries or illness, and a further 124,000 were wounded. As a member of the British Empire, Australia had made a significant sacrifice for the Allied war effort. Throughout the war, the nursing sisters of the Australian Army served wherever Australian troops were sent, and they dealt with the injuries and immense suffering in the field. A new weapon of warfare was used, mustard gas. This chemical caused agonizing burns, blindness, and respiratory and lung problems. Sadly, it also had a way of killing men for many years after the war ended. Shrapnel tore men to pieces. High explosives destroyed their trenches. Smoke covered everything. Diseases such as typhus and dysentery flourished, and soldiers suffered skin diseases, trench foot, and frostbite in harsh European winters. The sights, sounds, and smells were truly horrible. So many came home and endured years of ill health, disability, and mental scars. Families faced the loss of loved ones. They faced the silent suffering of looking after the wounded, the disabled, and those who simply no longer were able to face the day. Many of our soldiers who did not come home lay buried in hundreds of cemeteries near the villages where battles once raged. Sadly, some 11,000 have no known grave. World War I is often referred to as the Great War. Great was the devastation to all countries involved. Great was the courage, bravery, endurance, and sacrifice made by our Australian soldiers and nurses. When you hear someone speak about the Anzac spirit, think of courage, bravery, endurance, mateship, determination, and sacrifice. The sacrifices of our forces continues to shape who we are as we reflect on Australia's wartime history and our nation's contribution to international peace. Our armed forces have since served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and many peacekeeping efforts in other parts of the world. The Anzac tradition, with its ideals of courage, endurance, and mateship, are still relevant today. Every year on the 11th of November at 11 a.m, we remember all our Australians who have died and suffered in all wars and conflicts.
Why are they selling poppies, Mummy? Selling poppies in town today?
The poppies, child, are flowers of love for the men who marched away.
But why have they chosen a poppy, Mummy? Why not a beautiful rose?
Because, my child, men fought and died in the field where the poppy grows.
But why are the poppies so red, Mummy? Why are the poppies so red?
Red is the colour of blood, my child, the blood that our soldiers shed.
The heart of the poppy is black, Mummy. Why does it have to be black?
Black, my child, is the symbol of grief for the men who never came back.
But why, Mummy, are you crying so? Your tears are giving you pain.
My tears are my fears for you, my child, for the world is forgetting again.